Blood is coming out of his ears. The doctor, his legs is blown off.
You received a Purple Heart. Can you share with us what occurred for you to be able to receive that?
I hear the loudest bomb, loudest explosion I could ever hear in my life. And it was a 500-pound car bomb, and it drove up and hit them. The blast from that hit my tank, slammed it down, but the shrapnel metal from all of this and knocked me out.
You go through all that. You come back to the States, but why aren't you totally messed up on alcohol or drugs or sniffing cocaine or homeless somewhere? What's different about you? Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. Michael Allison is my guest today. He's a US Marine Corps veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and internationally recognized leadership strategist. As the CEO of the Adversity Academy, he has spent over 20 years helping individuals and organizations transform adversity into opportunities for growth. A best-selling author and TEDx speaker, Michael integrates resilience, leadership, and personal development strategies to help others break through limitations and lead with impact. His work's been featured by Microsoft, TEDx, and ESPN, and more. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Doug. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, man.
Good. All right. So in the intro there, you received a Purple Heart. Can you tell us, can you share with us what occurred for you to be able to receive that?
Yeah, definitely, Doug. It's something that it's an honor to serve my country, and I would be remiss if I don't recognize some of the guys that actually took part during that day. And there was actually some guys that actually lost their lives on that day, which included one of my best friends, Solto. And the story goes as I was there in Iraq, and obviously we know what transpired, what led up to Iraq to Fallujah from 9/11, and then President Bush declaring war. And from that, I was in California and I was there training as an amphibious assault vehicle section leader, which are those tanks that operate in land and water that also carry the infantry. And we were there in California and we were training. And then our Captain Venning came out, and in 29 Palms, he told us, boys, it's our turn and it's time for us to invade Iraq and go to Fallujah. And we started ramping up the training a little bit more. And after ramping up the training, we left from California to Seattle, from Seattle to Canada, from Canada to Germany, from Germany to Kuwait. And while we're there in Kuwait, we're just preparing, getting ready to go on a long convoy into the city of Fallujah. And we got the briefing and we went on a convoy with tanks, Hummers, 5 tons, all of these assault vehicles getting ready to go into the city. And we rolled in and nothing happened on our path there. But once we got there, we go to the fob, park all of our vehicles. And as soon as we got there, within an hour of us going through our debrief, we hear incoming. And all of a sudden we hear boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden, these mortars landed in our vicinity. No one got injured, no one got hurt. But this is when I had the rude awakening of knowing like this is real. And at any given moment, you could lose your life. So the first mission while we're there, we go out and we're providing security. Myself, my gunnery sergeant is providing security for another unit. And nothing happens. But it gets dark, and all of a sudden, there's no street lights or anything like that, so you can't see anything. And in the middle of the night, we get an RPG shooting at us, and the RPG shoots over my AAV tank, and it lands directly behind me. And they fire off another one, and it lands behind me. You could just hear it and smell the whizzing of the bullet
And
going
sorry,
over.
just to clarify what an RPG is that like a bazooka type thing or?
It's kind of like a bazooka, but it's called a rocket propelled grenade.
Right.
And they shoot it, and the missile landed right behind us. And we immediately fire back, and we're shooting at the building and level the entire building, everything and everyone that was inside of it. We go back, and as we go back, my gunnery sergeant, me and him, is talking about it. And what was really cool was the bond that we had between each other. And we talked about having each other's back. And I mentioned him because shortly after that, he got injured and he hurt his back. And I took over and I became the section leader of our section. So being the section leader, you're first in everything. You're doing every single thing on every mission, every patrol. So towards the end of our tour there in Iraq, we go out on one of our last missions, and we're there with the Iraqi soldiers. And while we're there out there with the Iraqi soldiers in another unit, and we're providing security for another unit. And we get mortars being shot at us because the Iraqi soldiers started shooting their guns in the air, giving up our position. Got really pissed, got really mad, but immediately right after that, we started getting incoming mortars and they started shooting at us. And now we're trying to get out of there because we're in a defensive position. We start speaking with the eye in the sky. The eye in the sky identifies where they're located at. Our tanks identify where they're at, and we flank them and we capture them. After we capture them, we found a whole bunch of RPGs, grenades, guns, you name it, ammunition, all these things they was using to try and kill us. And then we turned them in. After turning them in, we come back out to link up with our unit that was in around the same vicinity from where that just took place. And myself, as the section leader, we have Lowe, which is my driver, and I have Castanelli as my assistant inside of our tank. We're going around and we're delivering supplies counterclockwise to all of the tanks that's sitting there. And we get to the last vehicle, and the last vehicle was a Hummer, an armored Hummer. And they had my gunnery sergeant on there. He was in the back smoking a cigarette. We had the doctor on the passenger side. Then we had the gunner in the center, which was Hernandez, and we had my best friend Solto, which was on the driver's side. I give them their supplies and we pull off. And as we pull off, I hear the loudest bomb, loudest explosion I could ever hear in my life. And it was a 500-pound car bomb, which was a VBID. It was a vehicle improvised explosive device. And it drove up and hit them. And the blast from that was a 500-pound car bomb that this person had in this vehicle. The blast from that hit my tank, slammed it down, but the shrapnel metal from all of this gashed me above the eye, injured my shoulder, and knocked me out. Castanelli comes up and he grabs me and started checking on me. Sorry, Nelson, are you okay? Are you okay? He gets me out and pulls me out of the vehicle and makes sure that I'm fine. And I said, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Let's go check on these guys because I know that this immediately just happened to these guys here. And we get out. And Doug, man, I see this big old crater, big old hole, bigger than a swimming pool. And you just see nothing but dust, fire, smoke. And my gunnery sergeant laid out. Blood is coming out of his ears. The doctor, his legs is blown off. Hernandez, half of his face is gone. And my best friend Soto, his stomach, his inside is like all over in front of the vehicle on the steering wheel. And man, I had to put him in a body bag. And this really like rocked my world, man. And I walked away from that with a whole lot of grief and the guilt that was tied to that, to be quite honest with you, because I just drove around counterclockwise. I just drove past this same vehicle that just drove up on them and took their lives. And that was one of the struggles that I had because I've always questioned like, how did I not have the intuition or inclination to identify this? And I struggled with that for a very, very, very long time, man. But that's how I ended up having a Purple Heart. But I had to share the story of how all of that actually took place.
Mm. So how old were you when you joined and you had that first incident, when you first, and then how old were you when that last incident happened when you were about to finish up your tour?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually signed up and joined the Marine Corps at 17 years old. And then I went after 9/11, I was about 20 years old. And then shortly after that, I was in Iraq Fallujah, about 23, 24 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty young. Like I know I barely turned 19. I became a professional firefighter, you know, 4 months recruit school, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then about 2 months, 3 months in, we went to my first real serious incident, and I'm like, what
Uh-huh.
the heck's going on here? Like I should be home in bed. I'm inside a blackened building, like at 4 o'clock in the morning, that's blazing hot, and you're trying to do so, and you're like, you have no idea what you're doing. And initially, I was all on my own because 40 years ago we were very understaffed, and yeah, so like there's nothing like what you went through. Yeah, I get it. And when you're young, you haven't got a lot of life experiences, and it's not just because it's just your age. You can only go through so much at a certain age, and at that young age, it's challenging.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely, man. I don't know how much experience you can have, but I went to Iraq Fallujah with zero experience of combat, right? So
mm,
this is firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience of going through this. Yes, we did a whole bunch of preparation. We did a whole bunch of training when it comes to identifying what the scenario could actually be like, what the people are going to talk about, what they're going to dress like, some of the things that could be disguised, some of the things that could be in the building, some of the things that may be tied to like their religion and their practices. We did all those training, but you can't tell if a soda can is going to be a bomb on the side of the road. You know, it's so many things that it could get very dicey and very tricky. And unfortunately, some of those things that was on the side of the road took some of our lives over there.
You go through all that. You come back to the States. I'm not sure, at some stage after that, you retire from the military. I think when we talked last time, was it 8 years you did total? Was that right?
Yeah, did 8 years of serving. Yep.
Yeah. So you come back, you start a company up to help people with adversity, and you go on. And like talking with you right now, I mean, we met a week ago online and talked a little bit, so I don't know you at all, and I don't know your history. But why aren't you totally messed up on alcohol or drugs or sniffing cocaine or homeless somewhere? I'm, and maybe not many, that doesn't happen to many veterans, but in Australia, like we hear about US veterans like who go through experiences like you've been through. So I ask you why, what's different about you? What happened with you that you've been able to head on a different path at the end of that?
I'll say this. I developed the intuition of just having resilience through adversity. And I'll share with you what actually took place with my transition. So, you know, I didn't I didn't cower to a lot of things that I could have been susceptible to. And I say, because a lot of things happened to me, but I didn't subject myself to saying, this is it. I'm at rock bottom and I'm going to stay here. So I'll share with you. So when I transitioned, no, it wasn't great. You know, I struggled with finding employment. So it took me several months to actually get a job when I got out of the military because I thought I had a plan. I thought I had retirement money and all those things, but those things don't actually last long. So I had a chance to go work on the railroad. And after working on that railroad for about 5 years, I came across a situation. The dispatcher called me. I'm the train master, and they say, "Hey, your crew just ran over somebody." And I get called out in the middle of the night, and I have to get my crew off the train, get another crew to replace them, show up there with the coroner, the police department, and the news reporters are there because someone jumped in front of a train and killed themselves. And I show up and I see this dead body cut in half. It immediately brought me with flashbacks from my time in Iraq. And that put me in a funk for a very long time. And unfortunately, seeing that, I went to go get checked into the hospital, went to go get help, diagnosed with PTSD. And being diagnosed with PTSD, I lost my job. And now I'm unemployed and I'm out of a job for close to 2 years. And then between that time span, I went back to school, get my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. And throughout that time span, I went through a very dark, dark time spiraling. So I was going through divorce. When I got that divorce the same night, I got a DUI. Had to deal with everything here in America that comes with a DUI, going to jail, going to court, probation officers, and all those things. And I was struggling. Then several years later, my life started getting a little bit better, and I remarried. And I got remarried, and after 6 months, the relationship starts going south. And I find myself going through another divorce again, and I'm living in isolation here in Tampa, Florida. And it got so bad when I was in isolation. I had so many isolated thoughts and things coming in my head of like how bad of a person that I am with some of the things that I was going through, some of the things that I did, the grief and the guilt from some of the things that took place in Iraq, and the things that occurred to me from my childhood. And I tried to take my life, man. And that brought me to actually rock bottom. But it was in that moment when I started saying to myself, and I'm a person of faith, started like digging deep and asking God, like, why is all these things going on with me? And it was in that moment where I said, this is not going to be my life. This is not how things are going to end. And that's when I started just focusing more on me and working on myself and transitioning where I could be much more resilient when it comes to facing things with adversity. And from there, man, I set myself on a blaze, set myself on a path, started working on myself when it comes to like mental health, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, neuro-linguistic programming, starting diving deeper into leadership, personal growth, professional growth, putting myself in a community where people are supporting me and uplifting me. And once I got on that path and started changing a lot of things about myself, man, my career started taking off. That's when I got a chance to write the book. That's when I got a chance to start my franchise. That's when I got the chance to start the Adversity Academy. And when I started doing some of those things, I realizing how many people I was helping and realizing the impact that I was making. And I knew that I was on the right path. I think that adversity actually just sharpens like your intuition because it forces you to start paying more attention to like some of these subtle cues that surround us. And when I was at my lowest points and struggling with some of these PTSD and some of the personal challenges, that's when I had to start relying, digging deeper into like the logic of things, right? So that's when I started like looking at my patterns, my behaviors, recognizing some of the things that are these like my gut feelings or what are some of these things that are affecting me? And once I started understanding myself a little bit more, becoming much more self-aware, that's when I started trusting my own personal belief, my own personal intuition, removing all of the negative things around me so I could just actually get on this path and like start this company and taking this company to where I actually wanted to take it to.
Yeah. So I'm curious with your PTSD because I get you, I hear you there on that one. If you got put in an unusual spot again where you witnessed, a scene again like you did with that train track that night, um, do you think you'd be okay now, or do you think it could trigger you again? And you,
I think I'm much more prepared now to handle situations and circumstances like that. I'll say this, my wife would probably tell you this, but like whenever people kind of give me bad news or negative thoughts or negative things, I kind of like handle things much more better now. Like, so I find that like and maybe it's probably some of the training that the Marine Corps has instilled in me in regards to just learning how to handle tough times and tough situations. And since that time period, since that time span, I've experienced other people's death. I've experienced a whole bunch of other negative things that has occurred, and I did not really let any of those things truly affect me. And gaining some of the knowledge and the skills that's attached to PTSD and things like that I've been able to much deal with those situations much more better. And when it comes to like seeing another, if I was to come across another suicide, another situation like that, obviously if it's a close family member, then it might be a little bit different for me actually, right? But in
mm,
regards to someone that I have no connections to or no idea or anything like that, yeah, there could be a possibility. But in regards to dealing with it and handle it, I would feel that I'm much more equipped and much more prepared.
yeah. And I asked you that in case there's men listening who have been going through PTSD and think, all right, you're talking about all this work you got to do to get past it. What's the point if I'm still going to come across these scenes? But you've sort of given them from your perspective and your experience that if they do work on themselves and try and get things together, they will handle the scenes and situations better. All right, so while we're still talking about heavy questions and all sorts of stuff like that, I'm full of them, man. What's your currently in your life now? What's your greatest fear?
What is my greatest fear right now? Man, that's a good question, Doug. So,
Yeah.
so my greatest fear right now in my life, I will say is this. So, I mentioned to you that I went through a child custody battle with my first wife, which is my ex-wife, and for close to Doug, for close to about 3.5 years, me and her spent time in court trying to fight over the custody of my son. And that was very tolling on me, especially when you're in court and you're paying all of these legal fees. Then for me to be a part of my son's life, I'm flying every single month and I'm paying for flights, I'm paying for hotels, I'm paying for rent a car, and all of these other things, especially when you have a young kid and you're trying to entertain them and spend time with them as much as you can within a 2 day period time span, as much as you can, because you're missing so much time. And from that time frame, I've always made it a point to be a part of my son's life. And now he's getting ready to graduate here in 4 weeks, and he's getting ready to go off to college. And I will say that he's now living with me, which turned out to be a blessing because for that time span early in his life, I fought so much for him to be a part of my life. But now he's living with me majority of the time. So I get a chance to see him every single day, get a chance to be a part of his life every single day. And now the fear comes in as he's getting ready to depart. He's getting ready to go out into this big world where there's so many things out here that he could face, he could go through. And I think most parents probably would identify with this. Like if this is your kid, this is your child, you feel or you hope that you prepare them with all of the ammunition, all the things that they could put inside of their tool belt, all of the knowledge that you could give them to go out into this world and just to be his own man and go out here and actually do some great things with the knowledge and the skills that he's gained in school and just throughout life too as well. But that's one of the biggest fears, just him going out here in this world. And we know this world could be mean. We know that this world, there's so many things out here, man, that he could face that we see shooting on school grounds. We see he could get caught up in the wrong friends. He could get all of these different things. So we just hope that we give him all of the right proper things so he could go out here and be really, really successful.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. I've got four adult sons, aged from 39 down to 23, and I hear you when they start heading out on their own and yeah, doing their thing. And yeah, it's yeah, you just got to have some faith in a higher source to keep it keep it together and keep their
Definitely, man.
lives flowing. And yeah, yeah. So the podcast's about intuition, and so I'm curious about, has there been any specific times in your life where you've noticed intuitive things coming to you that you either have or haven't acted on? Because we've all, it doesn't matter who you are on the planet, there would always be anyone's super, multi-trillionaire to homeless people would have said, I knew I should have done that, or I knew I shouldn't have done that. Have you had moments like that or synchronicities that you have or haven't followed at all?
Yeah, I have, and I'll take you back to the story of when I was serving in Iraq. When when I got to Iraq, I got there, and before I got there, I got rid of every single thing that I owned, and because of the possibility of like I may not make it back, I may not come back. I could actually possibly die here. And I know that was one of the biggest fears of my family. And before I left, I remember my mom invited me to church, and the pastor and everybody's just there praying over me, praying over me, praying over me. And when I got there and I went on that first mission, that RPG shot over me, and it didn't touch me, didn't hit me or anything. And I was wondering, like, is he a bad shot? Did I get lucky? Because I could feel the heat of this thing going over me, and it didn't touch me. And shortly after that, my gunnery sergeant got injured. And this young 23, 24-year-old guy, Sergeant Allison, is now leading all of these guys, leading his troops in war. Now I'm responsible for all of these other people's lives and any story that leaves from here to go to their parents, to their mom, and all these things. And when I first got in the military, I was a part of the funeral detail. So I had a chance to bury quite a few different veterans and go to the ceremony, do the 21 gun salute, fold the flags, and bringing that flag to that family member that just lost their life. And that always stuck with me of I didn't want that responsibility or I didn't want that to hang on me and do that in Iraq, from Iraq. So I found myself throughout that time span of always relying on my instincts, relying on my gut intuition feelings, all of those different things that were always going to be the safest and the best course of action that's going to keep people alive. And I've applied that throughout my life and throughout my career. So if it was going on a patrol, my intuition always kicked in when it comes to my leadership. Whenever we was out there and those guys were shooting at us, it was my intuition that kicked in of we need to react and do this. We need to talk to the eye in the sky. We need to go this route to come up with this formation and capture these guys inside of this house. And I've always kept that in regards to reacting or just being much more prepared because of my experiences. And I say that as in, as people were shooting at us, I never once got scared. I never once like was like, oh my God, what's going on or something or anything like that. And I've always thought about those people praying for me, but I also thought about my life as growing up. When I was growing up, we went through a flood and a hurricane, left us homeless. We were struggling trying to figure things out. But I saw from my mom and dad, from their experiences, they figured things out. We had a hurricane. We lost everything again. They figured things out. We came to America from Jamaica. and we're living in the projects, living in the ghettos, the worst of the worst, and we made it out of there and we figured things out. I was in high school playing football, got two injuries, ACL, MCL, still made it out of that, came back out healthy. I made it out of that. So throughout my life, I've realized if I just keep that same type of intuition and just using all these past experiences, it allows me to lead different. It allows me to show different character. It allows me to show a different identity to myself and someone that's always going to persevere to tough times and tough situations, just using that level of intuition as well, too.
Mm. So you talked there about your fear at the moment of your son in America going out into the world, and there's your family, and you said, "Oh, yeah, they would have had fears because I was going to Iraq." You know, so it was like, "Yeah, man, I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, their level of fears, yeah." So at the moment, your fear in your life's probably lower on the chart than theirs was when you were that younger man heading out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This fear is not comparable. He's still in arm's reach. He's just down the street where we could actually talk to him and touch him. I was overseas in another country where we probably only had maybe like four phone calls over a span of a year, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah, and they know people are trying to kill you every day.
Exactly. Every single day. You never know if you're going to get that phone call or
Yeah,
that letter in the mail if somebody's going to show up to the house and let you know that your son is no longer here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I guess that's how it would be because with them only like, every 3 or 4 months hearing from you on the phone or whatever, they know, your best buddy's not about to ring them like 30 minutes after it happened. It's, the lack of communication. So I'm
You're right,
curious,
man.
yeah.
Go ahead, man.
So I was just going to say now in your life, what lights you up? What gives you oxygen now?
Man, what lights me up and what gives me oxygen? There's quite a few things, Doug, that actually gives me oxygen. So doing what I do is what I love to do best now. And I never knew that what I'm doing now would actually come to fruition until I started getting that revelation of like, oh, I'm coming into my identity. I'm coming into my purpose of what I was made to do on this earth. And it's me. It's what makes me unique, and it's sharing my story and sharing that with people to help motivate people, inspire people, and then actually taking some of the things that I do and helping organizations and helping company to help them get through tough times and tough situations too as well. And I say that because after sharing my life and sharing my story, there's so many other people that are going through some of the same things too as well, especially men. A lot of men won't talk about some of the things that I've experienced or went through and they identify with some of the things that I've been through. So, just to be a little bit transparent with your audience, when I first came here to America, my female cousin was trying to have sex with me. Following that, I had a situation in the Boy Scout where something that occurred to me in the Boy Scouts should never happen to any young man in their life at 11 years old. Going through the situation of marriage, divorce, going to jail, and trying to commit suicide. All of those things were some troubling things that was going on in my life that I was facing at the time. And to get past some of those things was a really struggle. And then several years ago, I'm in Houston, Texas, and I'm at a workshop with the Writers Guild, and I come across this guy named Steve Belber, and he's a writer for the TV show Law and Order, and he just wrote another movie called The Messenger on Netflix. And we're there sitting down writing, and I write my story for him, and I wrote chapter one and I wrote chapter two of my story. And he was like, "Man, you got a really good story, man. Why don't you just flesh this out and put in some more details and so we can know about it?" Because I kind of like jam-packed my whole life in two chapters. And he was like, "You can't tell a story like that." So from there, I said, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it." And honest, Doug, I never did it. I was such a in such a space where I was not ready to be vulnerable and transparent to let the whole world know about my life and know about my experience that I was not going to talk about it. So from that time span, that's when I started going on my own journey of my own personal growth and self-discovery. And once I gained that freedom of me being vulnerable and transparent, I wrote that book in a span of in 3 months. I was running my construction company, and then it was something that came over me saying, running this company is not what I'm here to do. And I sold that company back to the franchise. And in the span of 3 months, I wrote the book. From the book came a TED Talk. From a TED Talk, I got invited to come in work with companies and organization and start telling my story. And from telling my story, people was just coming up to me, man, you know what? I'm going through some of those things. You know what? I know a lot of veteran friends that are going through some of the same things. Can you talk to some of my veteran friends? Hey, me and my wife just went through a divorce and we got remarried just like you and your wife got remarried. Tell us what was that process like for you? And once I started realizing that my story was actually a blessing to help other people, to show them and let them know that this is not the end. You could actually get through some tough times and tough situations. And becoming an example was what actually truly lights me up, man. And from there, I said, you know what? I want to help people and make an impact in their lives too, as well. And after we did the book, did the TED Talk, did quite a few different talks in different places, I said, let me get better at speaking. And then I hired a speaking coach so I could become a keynote speaker. And being a keynote speaker now, I've spoken actually over 50 times now, telling my story, sharing my life story, and making an impact to people. And this has actually been a blessing. And this is what I actually love to do. I'm getting a chance, the opportunity to tell my story now. And I'm going to write it in my next book, Breaking the Bottle. And this is something that I look forward to it too as well, man, because it's truly exciting to share my life and share my story and know that it's going to make an impact to people too as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's something you said earlier on there, it just reminded me about the saying, most men lead lives of quiet desperation, because you said, like, particularly with men. And, that's so true. And I probably 35 years ago, I heard that for the first time. And I looked at my dad and I thought, oh my God, that is the life he's living. That is what he's doing and going through. And it's like, wow, like, and he drank a awful lot of alcohol, I can tell you. And he never physically hurt us, but he emotionally, like he would Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, he'd drive in that driveway, and we were never happy to hear the car come in the driveway.
Oh, man.
The best we could hope for was he'd walk in the door, go straight to the bedroom and collapse on the bed, and then we would exhale because we were holding our breath when that doorknob turned. And particularly, like, dad was 6 foot tall, my mum was 4 foot 10, and she had a bit of Italian in her, and she'd be a bit feisty, and she'd challenge him. Because my mum, she went to church every Sunday. Like, if you drank or smoked, you were a sinner going to hell. And she'd sometimes give it to him, and we'd be sitting there, and you'd be thinking, "Oh, I hope mum just zips it today and just doesn't, like, where have you been? Like, spending all that money, like, geez, it was hell." And so, that it's one of the reasons I've got the podcast, to help men develop their intuition. Like, because my dad was intuitive. He taught me a few intuitive things once when I was a kid, and he'd take me fishing, and but he didn't follow it. If my thing is, Michael, if people, men in particular, follow their intuition, it'll help them make one better decision a day. Just imagine that if every man on the planet made one better decision a day because they followed their intuition, or they just made it for whatever reason. Like, imagine in 3 months' time how better you and I would feel about ourselves, just personally, because we made one better decision a day than we're making right now. And like, our self-esteem we would start to walk with our head held high, because it's like, I know I've got a handle on life. It's instead of, and at the moment you're running around being fed with oxygen by being able to share your story, because you've just chosen not to run down the bad path. You've like, you're choosing a life that's not full of desperation, and it's awesome. And that's why I have people like you on, to help inspire men who are listening. It's not that bad. Yes, it's bad. It sucks. All these things, what you had happen to you over there, before you joined the military, after you got out of the military, we all have crappy times. I sometimes sit when I got nothing to do, remember all the fires I went to where there were loss of lives, or the vehicle, and there was more loss of lives in motor vehicle accidents where we were cutting people out and stuff like that. And only a handful of times in actual fires, but they're horrendous,
Mhm.
And yeah, and in the job I was in, we didn't just glimpse over and glance at that. We were with the bodies for considerable amounts of time
Hmm.
at close quarters for various reasons.
Hmm.
And it's not fun to think back on that sort of stuff. And it would be real easy to seek some sort of substance, alcohol, some sort of drug, some sort of prescription medication, etc., to dull that. And I know that's what my dad did. He used that to dull his whole life, And for the last 10 years of his life, he was using alcohol to try and end his life. He drank so much. It never did because he spent the last 11 months of his life in a nursing home where he couldn't get hold of alcohol. So, it was, but yeah, we have choices in life. And yeah, I guess that's why I've got you here today is to help men realize if they think it's got too bad, there's choices. And it's hard, but it's hard if you make bad choices too. Like either way, it's hard. But if you make a good choice, it just makes you easier and there's more oxygen to light you up. So,
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, man. As you're telling me that, I thought about my mom and dad. So I grew up with my mom and dad, and my dad worked three jobs. So I understood from the standpoint of working three jobs in regards to like he wants to provide for our family and things like that. And then my mom worked two jobs. And it was a struggle within our household because one was present, one was not present, one was here, there, and things like that. So when it comes to like a young man and you're trying to develop that bond or that connection and things that's tied to that as a young man and trying to connect with your dad and connect with your parents, you could have those missing points because some of those things are not there. And I grew up where either influenced by some of the things that my dad would say or some of the things that I'm seeing on TV or just some of the things especially that got bolstered when I joined the Marine Corps and it tied down to like society tells men that you got to be bold, you got to be macho, you got to be tough, you got to carry this certain types of stigma, right? So when you're carrying some of those things, you got to think about that in regards to, am I able to be vulnerable? Am I able to be transparent? And when we carry some of those things, we can't let our guards down. We can't get the help that we need. We can't start focusing on things that we need to focus on because we don't want to look weak. We don't want to look like we're not we're not able to get things accomplished and get things done. And we could also fall into that trap. And that actually keeps us in that space of getting out of getting out of the situation that we're in and trying to get to the self-mastery or get to that better decision making and following our intuition as well, too.
yeah. Yeah, I remember probably 35 years ago, the fire service in it that I worked for, they were trying to be proactive to help us, with PTSD and that sort of thing, because that
Uh-huh.
was just becoming a term, sort of, well, barely. Um,
They
and
used
they
to
were,
call it shell shock.
yeah. And so we had these things, pieces of paper go up on the notice board that if, we get back from an incident at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and any one of the crew felt, disturbed, etc., there was a phone number to ring. And, within an hour, a counselor from this company would be at the station and they would sit us down and we would talk about what went on. I mean, the guys used to look at that and go like, yeah, right. Like as if, like as if I'm going to put my hand up and say, I need help. Like, like it's just, it took a real long time. And occasionally a senior officer would instigate it, and not because they were barely at the incident at all. Like they didn't need it. They just rocked up for the last half hour, and how's it all going? Good, yeah, all right. And they'd think, yeah, this was wild. And they'll ring the counselor, and then the counselor's sort of there at the station when the guys get back. And look, I remember meeting some of them, and at one stage I had a desk job and I was the work health and safety officer. So I met some of these people outside of when there wasn't any, counselling going on, and they were great people. They really, really were, and they were who we needed. But
Hmm.
it was like, and when I was in that position as the work health and safety officer for a while and the rehab coordinator, I was then trying to encourage the guys, and they're like, Doug, Like seriously, man.
Get out of
Like you,
here.
you gotta be kidding, mate. And I'm going, but you just need to try it. I think you guys will appreciate it, you know. And they're like, nah, like you're dreaming. And I got it, you know, because when I was in there, but like you didn't want to be the one because there's, you know, you don't get that many fire calls. There's a lot of downtime. Professional firefighters in the developed world go to emergencies 3% of their working time.
Oh, wow.
3%. Yeah, there is so much downtime. I'm very good at table tennis, I can tell you. Uh, not quite as good as Forrest Gump. Nothing, I'm not in that league. But hey, you when you spend a lot of hours a day, like, you know, yeah. Yeah, my kid, you ask my kids, they go, oh yeah, he'll whip your butt at table tennis. And where did I learn that? At the fire station. Only because I didn't like playing pool. We had like a full-size 12-foot by 6-foot pool table. And I didn't like playing on it. I just didn't like pool. So I played table tennis. And yes, but when it happens, it's yeah, it's over the top, you know. It's yeah, anyway. All right, I got one last question for you. It's another big question as well, you know.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. If your microphone was connected to all 8.2 billion people on the planet right now, and you knew they wouldn't judge, blame, or shame you for anything you said, what would you say to them?
I think one of the simplest way to develop intuition is through reflection. And what I would say to people is that you need to spend some time at the end of every single day and asking yourself, how am I a better person today? What did I sense today? Right? What's my gut feeling? What are some things that I do have? And start identifying things about yourself so you could become much more solutions focused and solutions thinking because adversity and challenges is going to hit us either today, tomorrow, next week, or anything like that. But we've all gone through so many experiences, and we also have encounters with so many other people that have some of the same experiences that we've been through that we could rely upon them in regards to sources and answers. So we don't have to get down in the weeds, especially just like I did in my past. And those things kept me stuck. But if we become much more solutions thinking and start processing things that way, there is a brighter side on the other side, especially when it's time for success in our lives, for our family, for our businesses, for our kids. And that's what I would share with people.
Awesome. Excellent. That's great advice for the men listening today. Thank you for your time. I'll let you get back to your family. And it's morning here. It's evening for you. And I know you're gonna spend the evening with your family and that sort of stuff. Thanks for sharing with us all about your life and how, you know, how to you know, when it gets pretty tough, how to pull yourself out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.